Ahoy hoy, I'm Planet Walk, and when I first heard of Kent Hovind, I thought that he was just a young Earth creationist, and that he just talked about how evolution wasn't real, and that was it. But then, I saw that he had certain takes on physics, and that was a sight to see. Now, one of the topics that he also likes to talk about is how the world was flooded, and he's come up with some wacky ideas of how that happened. Now, you might be thinking, oh, it's Kent Hovind, what do you expect? And I would expect him to say something that sounds, at least somewhat reasonable to a young Earth creationist. Not something that sounds like it came from our feathered friend over at Mud Fossil University. So yeah, that might give you an idea of what we're getting into. Don't worry, I don't think he's going to be talking about giant creatures and interstitium balls. We don't have to worry about that.
Like an atheist, we wait until an atheist to stick their head up, make a silly claim that his evolution religion is true, and then sweetly and swiftly whack him back down with real science. In Christian love, of course. So we get the...
No, Kent, don't pull it out. We don't need to see it.
So we get the hammer with real science, whack him back down.
Kent, you should really place the hammer off to the side, not down in front of you, because for a second there, it looked like you're about to pull something else out there. Something that I'm sure nobody wants to see. Also, maybe don't whack it right in front of you because it makes it look like you're whacking yourself there. And again, that's something that I don't think anybody wants to see.
We've whacked lots of atheists, and if you have learned to keep their head down and stop making their silly claims, their evolution religion is true. Some of them now are focusing most of their attention on flat earthers. Good. Focus on them.
Okay, Kent. I've seen a bit ahead, and I think I know what I'm titling this video.
Any and all scoffers who do not believe in Noah's global flood. You don't believe that flood? Well, this whacking is for you. Loving whacking, okay?
Okay, Kent, I'm going to have to politely decline this loving whacking of yours because you're not my type. Find someone else who's interested. By the way, what I'm actually saying there is that you probably should change what you're saying because, it can be taken the wrong way.
When I'm giving my tour around here, I showed the people the gravel they dug out of here, a 40-foot layer they dug out containing 7 layers of gravel. I say these gravel layers were made by the moon. What? Oh yeah, the layers of the earth were made by the moon. We'll cover that.
Oh geez, that is certainly a claim, and I do hope that we get to see his reasoning for that, but I think he's missing that the moon was dug out of the Grand Canyon. Flat Earth Aussie Jesus told me that, so it must be true.
Scoffers in the last days are willingly ignorant of how God made the earth and the heavens, and what does the Bible say about that? How the earth was in the water and out of the water. What does that mean?
Maybe the earth was doing the hokey pokey, you never know. Ask Roger from Mud Fossil University, he might have a few thoughts on that.
What did the ancient people, especially the Jews, think about the water above the canopy, above the atmosphere? We talked about that yesterday, the Josephus book right here, okay? How could water be kept above? Well, we talked about that. Air pressure or magnetic field if it was ice. Real simple.
Kent, you are very much starting to sound like a flat earther here. I had no idea how flat earthy this was going to end up sounding. All you'd have to do is say that the earth is covered by a dome with an ice wall and you'd practically be a flat earther then.
Okay. So, what was the original creation like? The earth had a canopy of ice, couple fingers thick, above the atmosphere, squeezing the atmosphere down into, say, 10 miles.
Oh, okay, next sentence. I was not prepared for that. And he mixed the dome and ice wall into one. That's a nifty thing. So yeah, basically he's a flat earther now.
Increasing air pressure, blocking UV light, impossible to have storms. Watch the weatherman. High pressure, clear skies. Low pressure, stormy weather. No storms. When Noah said it's going to rain, probably everybody said, what? What is rain? I couldn't prove it. I don't think it ever rained on the earth until that flood.
Okay, then if we take that logic, then the soil everywhere would be too dry to grow anything. There'd be no crops because the soil is just too dry. But I do not think that high pressure would necessarily stop all storms. I mean, Jupiter has had a storm for the last 400 years, and the pressure over there is very, very high. Oh wait, he's a flat earther now, so he's not going to listen to my Jupiter example, is he?
There's an obvious evidence all around the world that the ice came all the way down to southern Illinois. There are obvious effects from glaciers, okay?
I mean, there's also obvious evidence all around the world that evolution happened, but Kent seems to ignore that for some reason. I mean, he's certainly got the whole flat earth thing down, doesn't he? Only the science that agrees with me is correct, otherwise it's wrong.
There used to be water under the crust of the earth. That came shooting up. On one day, the whole earth cracked up like an eggshell and water went squirting out all these cracks all over the place.
Kent, you should really work on your phrasing there, because otherwise what you're saying can be taken completely in the wrong way.
Be sure to watch Walt Brown, Hydroplate Theory. It is phenomenal.
So I had a quick look to see what hydroplate theory was about, and lo and behold, all the results were to do with creationism. Not very surprising there. However, there was one result that I found quite interesting because it was from Answers Research Journal, and it appears to disagree with hydroplate theory. Now, personally, I would say that generally Answers Research Journal is probably a bad source because it's quite biased in favour of creationists. Now, whilst they argue that hydroplate theory still needs to be developed, they also argue that one of the strongest cases for it is, quote, internally inconsistent. Now, this is all based on ichnofossils. Now, I don't know much about it. However, I do want to say that it is very interesting that the people over in Answers in Genesis, who they themselves are young Earth creationists, that they disagree with hydroplate theory, or at least some of hydroplate theory. So yeah, I'm not exactly going to put much of my trust into Hovind on this one.
Once it gets a crack and the water can escape, what would happen under 60,000 psi? Well, the water would be forced out of there so fast. Hey, folks, welcome to Dinosaur Adventureland. Where are you from?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Good to have you. We'll give you the grand tour tomorrow. Okay. So 60,000 psi would probably launch rocks out into space.
Okay, let's assume that that is happening, that there is rock that is putting pressure on the water, and once there's a crack, that water has enough pressure to force it upwards. What do you think is happening to the rock after it forces the water out? Well, obviously that means that the rock is going to start occupying the space that the water is occupying. So the water can't go back there because there's now a whole lot of rock there. So that raises the question, where did the water go after the flood? Now, I know that he's probably going to try and answer that later on, but if his answer is, it just went back to where it was before, no, it doesn't work like that. Let's see.
Ripping the water up the sides of this cracked crust would tear pieces off and launch them into space.
But don't you have an ice wall dome that stops that from happening? By the way, the other flat earthers aren't going to be happy with you there, Kent, because they don't think that space is real. Just so you know.
So, to quickly review here, there used to be a seventh layer. Today the Earth has 6 layers in our atmosphere: troposphere, exosphere, thermosphere, ionosphere. There used to be a seventh one, a layer of ice, a couple fingers thick above the atmosphere.
Wait, what? You're telling me that the ice wall above the atmosphere was only about that thick? Now, given that Kent Hovind is about that thick, you'd be forgiven for thinking, you know, that's very thick. However, in the terms of a dome holding the atmosphere, that's actually not very thick. Especially when you consider that on one side there is the entire atmosphere, and on the other side, you have the vacuum of space. I feel like the forces involved here would just rip the entire thing apart, because that is something that can happen when you have a vacuum on one side of something and just a lot of pressure on the other side. I mean, we're dealing with a scenario that is a bit more extreme than that. I mean, it's an ice wall around the entire Earth.
The fact that ice is diamagnetic. Super cold ice becomes magnetic. It can be demonstrated by hanging an icicle from a thin string and bring a strong magnet near it. It'll twist away from the magnet.
You know, that doesn't help Kent Hovind's case at all, because that's extra forces on the ice. Sure, not very strong forces, but more forces nonetheless.
The 7 layers of our atmosphere today contain one called the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere. I believe there was a crystalline canopy of super cold ice 10 miles above the Earth that made the pre-flood world very different, like a big greenhouse. It would protect them from radiation, it would increase oxygen, eliminate storms, and the Bible says a mist went forth and watered the ground. It was a watering system from inside, not rain.
You know, even if you've got that mist, you're still going to have the problems that I mentioned earlier, because an important part of the ecosystem is water getting to higher places. Rain can do this very effectively because clouds can go over mountains. In fact, they quite often go over mountains. Now, if you don't have any water in higher areas, then nothing is going to be able to grow there. Sorry. However, this isn't the worst of it, because sure, maybe in low-lying areas you can grow some stuff. Good. What about fresh water though? Because you're not going to be able to have very many lakes. Lakes are quite often a decent distance above sea level. And that's how you often get rivers. You know, rivers often have fresh water, which is good for drinking. I suppose you could drink it from a lake, but I trust river water more than lake water. Look, what I'm trying to say is I don't think this would work, unless you've got some kind of magical mist, in which case let's just say that everything's magical and then problem solved.
Ice exhibits strong absorption in the ultraviolet wavelengths. So ice would block most UV light. The absorption of light at the red end of the spectrum is 6 times greater than the blue end. Anybody can research this, it's a well-established fact.
Okay, I did so, and it is a huge problem for Kent, because the ozone layer blocks out 98% of UV light. Now, it seems like ice can absorb a decent amount of UV light, but there is a type of light that it seems to be much better at absorbing, and that is infrared. In fact, it absorbs more infrared light than UV light. Now, how does the atmosphere get most of its heat? Now, most people will go, from the sun. You would be right about that. But the question is more, how do we get it from the sun? The answer is through infrared light. So because of this, if the Earth had an ice wall dome like Kent is proposing that kept out 98% of UV light, you would also keep out greater than 90% of infrared light. Everyone would freeze to death. Look, Kent, just give the ice wall dome up. It's not going to work.
Magnetic experiments. What happens to a magnet in cold temperatures? Let's see. I can barely read it over there. Let's see. One of those temperatures, one of those is temperature. In our last blog, we explored what happens to a magnet when exposed to extreme heat. Now let's do an experiment to explore what happens with extreme cold. Oxygen absorption and magnetic susceptibility of ice at low temperatures. See, if the Earth had a canopy of ice around it...
He literally just read things off as if they support his point, yet he said nothing there. Like, that would kind of be like if I went to debunk flat earthers and I read out part of the Wikipedia page on Earth saying, Earth has a dynamic atmosphere which sustains Earth's surface conditions and protects it from most meteorites and UV light at entry. It has a composition of primarily nitrogen and oxygen. Like, that adds nothing to the conversation about whether Earth is sphere or flat. But who knows? Maybe it was written by the Vlad the Inhaler guy and Kent Hovind's just outsourcing his thinking to flat earthers now. Would make sense with most of the stuff that he said in this video.
See, if the Earth had a canopy of ice around it, like my little globe here, it would be in contact with outer space, 450 below zero, but inside it would be nice and warm. Eskimos build an igloo out of ice. Look at this. Outside temperatures might be 49 below zero Fahrenheit. But inside the Eskimos' igloo, it's 61 degrees. Not bad.
You know, Kent, to keep the inside of an igloo warm, you need to have a constant source of generating heat. Otherwise, it gets cold. This doesn't work when you've got a layer of ice keeping the sun's infrared light from entering our atmosphere.
Paul said he was caught up to the third heaven. We covered that. First heaven where the birds fly, layer of ice. Second heaven where the stars are, another layer of ice. In paradise, I believe. Okay, I can't prove that one. I can't prove the first one either because it's gone, whatever was there. But the Bible says there was water above the firmament.
Okay, so I've been quite silly for a lot of this video, saying that Kent is basically a flat earther. And he is. However, I know that he doesn't actually believe that the Earth is flat. And the reason why I bring this up is because what he just said is the most flat Earth thing I have ever heard him say. Like, I can imagine a flat earther saying the exact same things that he is saying in this video because he's speaking like a flat earther. Kent, if you're watching this, well, hi, how you doing? But your arguments aren't all that different to a flat earther's arguments. Even when you talk about evolution, it's not that different to you being a flat earther. You and a flat earther would agree on basically everything except for the shape of the Earth. And as I've said before, if you're agreeing with flat earthers, it may be a good idea to reevaluate your positions.
There are deep sea thermal vents. These are the spots where there's hot water shooting up into the bottom of the ocean. Now hold it. If there's hot water shooting up into the bottom of the ocean, where does it have to be coming from? Down deeper than that. The water can't be shooting up into the bottom of the ocean unless it's coming from lower than that, like duh. there are still enormous amounts of water trapped in the crust of the Earth. Google how much water is in the crust of the Earth. Most of the articles will say 10 oceans worth of water are still trapped in the crust.
Okay, this is why I hate pop science, because it tends to leave out a lot of the nuance. Yes, technically, there is a lot of water in the Earth's crust. However, it is not liquid water that we are talking about here. It is hydroxide ions contained within a material called ringwoodite. Now, I do have to clarify that ringwoodite is not actually made out of wood, nor is it made out of rings, surprisingly. It is named after Ted Ringwood, just in case you heard that name and thought, huh, why is there so much wood in the crust? So yes, the water that Kent is talking about isn't exactly liquid water, and therefore would not be vented into the ocean.
So when this water came shooting out, it would launch things into space. Some of that debris shot up into space and is still flying around. And because we're traveling around the sun once a year, we smack into it once in a while like bugs on a windshield. Probably stuff that came from our planet.
So that is a lot of stuff to come from Earth. There's so much debris out there. Do you really think that much debris could come from Earth?
So I think the stuff was launched up. It's interesting, the moon, if you look at the near side of the moon that we always see, it's got big crater. On the far side, it's got small craters. Hovind theory, couldn't prove it, just my theory. Stuff went shooting out from the Earth, drifted around in space, and moon's gravity sucked some things back into the backside. And so they're littler pieces. The big ones hit it head on like a shotgun. Maybe that's why the moon has differential crater. Even Mars has craters on it. Ah, cool. Craters on Mars might have been from the fountains of the deep breaking open and shooting stuff off of the Earth. Craters on Venus. Maybe they got hit from stuff blowing off the Earth. There's some big craters on the Earth. Some stuff might have come back.
Kent, you're making the same mistake that flat earthers make. Space is huge. The chance of something coming from Earth hitting Mars or Venus is astronomically small. As for stuff hitting the moon, well, that's a bit more likely. However, the reason why there's so many craters on the back, or at least as far as I remember, is because that's the side that faces away from Earth. And therefore, it doesn't have Earth as a shield. If a meteor is headed for the moon, but Earth is in the way, then it's gonna hit Earth and not the moon. Makes sense. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this here for now because Kent Hovind he's reminding me too much of a flat earther. Well, that and my video editor keeps crashing whenever I get to Kent's parts. I think that does say something about Kent Hovind. Even my computer's sick of Kent Hovind. But let me know if you want a part 2, because I actually kind of do want to hear the rest of it, because I'm just waiting for Kent to go, so, you see, the Earth is flat, okay? Yeah. Maybe that's why he's happy that people are focusing on flat earthers now, because it takes away from the fact that he's a flat earther. Interesting idea. Anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video, and leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see me do for future videos. More Kent Hovind or more of someone else? I don't know. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching.